Back in 1871, a Chicago lawyer named Horatio Spafford made a large investment in real estate on the shores of Lake Michigan. A few months later, his young son passed away. And then a couple of weeks after that, the Great Chicago Fire wiped out every property that he had invested in. 2 years later, his wife and 4 daughters were to sail for Europe on a vacation. The day they were going to leave, there was a business emergency in town and he had to stay. He could not join them. So he sent his wife and daughters along, and 4 days later their ship was hit by an English vessel and it sank within a few minutes. When the survivors were safely brought to shore in Wales, Horatio's wife cabled her husband with 2 words: saved alone. While on his way over to get his wife and the remains of his daughters, he took a pen and paper and began to write these words: when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. That phrase, when sea billows roll, has a whole new resonance when you think of what he just went through. A hymn composer named Philip Bliss read the poem and turned it into a hymn. And we're still singing it today. Does anybody here not know that hymn? Yeah. When it feels that life is too much, some people seem to have the extraordinary ability to do okay. They seem to bounce pretty well. They have this unshakable faith that God is with them no matter what's going on, and that truly all is well with my soul. And then we have people like Job. We find the story of Job in the Hebrew Scriptures. Job was a very wealthy man with a large family and a great life. Meanwhile, up in heaven, as the story goes, God and Satan were having a lively argument about Job. God says that Job was a very faithful man and would remain one no matter what had happened. And Satan says, oh really, you want to bet? It sounds more like a sitcom setup than the Bible, doesn't it? Like, oh dear, we know what we're in for here. See, God was rather young and didn't know when Satan says, do you want to bet, that Satan knew something he didn't. So next we see what happened. Job's children are killed, the cattle are slaughtered, diseases invade his body. His friends come by to tell him that all of his problems happened because Job must have done something or said something to make God unhappy. Even his wife said, oh, just curse your God and die already. Next on the Real Housewives of the Bible, Job wants a divorce. After all the suffering done by Job, much of the book becomes a philosophical discourse on the meaning of suffering. And at the end of the book, Job tells God, I know that you can do all things and that no purpose of yours can be stopped. So God wins the bet after all and restores Job his entire fortune and more, twice as much as he had before. Entire fortune restored. Well, Mrs. Job would beg to differ. Her children were all killed. I would love to read her side of the story and see what she said. But back then, a wife and children were property. They were considered to be property. When the woman came of age and got married, it was shifted over to her husband, who then owned her. Although it seems to turn out okay in the end, the book of Job remains a problem. Like, what kind of God bets with Satan about anything? If Job was so faithful, why was God so vicious and capricious in testing Job that way? This is a loving creator. When crappy things happen to us, can we just lightly explain them away with, well, you know, God's ways are mysterious, and leave it at that, as we've heard our whole lives? That must be quite a wager God and the devil have going on about you and your life, right? It's like, oh, If things are really off, just say, well, apparently on the other side, somebody's taking a bet on me right now. That's just insane. That's just illogical. Now, of course, in Unity, we approach the Bible metaphysically or metaphorically. That means we look at each character, each story, each event in the scriptures as a symbol or as an allegory about our own spiritual path, about somewhere along the line, we're going through a Job experience. We're going through an experience of the bleeding woman. We are each character on some part of our lives. So we can't take the story of Job, or a lot of the stories in the Bible actually, as anything but allegorical. If we took them literally, we'd have to admit that God was either emotionally immature at best, or psychotic and deranged at worst. Either way, this is not a kind of a God that we would acknowledge as God here in Unity, or that anybody who was rational could think this is somebody that or something that I can worship, or even mildly respect. So we have to look at Job, and we have to look at Job metaphorically or metaphysically. So Job is you and Job is me when awful things happen for no apparent reason. That we have meditated, we prayed, we're trying to go through this, and there doesn't seem to be any answer anywhere for why we're going through this. And then we attempt to rationalize it, as in, I must have done something really awful that I don't know about. Or I must have said something that was really terrible for this to happen in my life. I guess it must be karma. Of course, Job's friends don't help him a single bit by blaming Job's seeming lack of faith for his trouble. The Orthodox religionists would say, you must have sinned if you're going through trouble, so you need to repent and then God will forgive you. But we in Unity would never say that, right? Right? No, here's what we say in Unity. You must be holding an error thought for that to happen. Or you need to forgive your mother and this will go away. Or I will pray for you that you realize what you need to do. I was talking to a Unity friend last week. I had a canker and I bit it. And I kept, you know how it is when you keep biting it because it gets bigger, then you keep biting it? This guy tried to metaphysical it. I'm like, stop doing that. I'm just sharing with you that I just bit my mouth. I said, oh, I'm so sorry I bit my mouth because I was talking and I was like, oh. I said, I don't need your metaphysical interpretation of my canker. I can do that quite myself. I mean, if things are happening over and over again, we might want to take a look at it. But if you have a canker and you bite it, it keeps getting bigger and sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Sometimes you just have to say, I got a canker and be done with it. In Unity, we call this metaphysical malpractice. I told you, I bought a lemon of a car, I drove it to Silent Unity, committed suicide. I should have known I paid $100 for it. God said, don't do this, and I went, it was $100, so I'm going to buy it anyway. So I committed suicide, and the supervisor of the evening shift said to me, well, Paul, you must be holding something in your consciousness. Thank you for sharing, let us pray. All right. This is the most damaging use of our spiritual tools of our Unity teachings that we can do. We don't know why anybody's going through anything. I barely know why I'm going through anything. For me to try to figure you out means that I would rather not think about my stuff and I can think about your stuff. Because you're a lot easier than me. I can look at you and say, oh, here's what you need to do. Now, if you come to me professionally, I will do that. Because you're coming to me for spiritual counseling or whatever it might be. I will give you the spiritual tools I think can be helpful. But we're not here to metaphysically interpret each other. These teachings are for me to work on in my life. How we think that we know what anybody is thinking or affirming or what is in their conscience. We don't. We do not know. Our teachings that our problems or challenges might be from ideas or thoughts that we're holding within us is for me to use privately. Or to come here and if you want to pray with somebody at the end of the service. That's why we have our prayer chaplains. Our prayer chaplain is of Jan today, yes? Hey, thank you, Jan. Jan will be back here praying if something has come up during the service, or you brought something in and you just want to release it. This is what we're here to do. She will not metaphysically interpret you. No, you will not. The only helpful response we as Unity students or practitioners have to anybody going through pain or fear or illness or relationship or financial issues is, I'm sorry you're going through that. And listen. Listening is a gift that we have. Holding you in my heart and silently praying that God is at work in you. While you share what you need to share, please never think I can't go to Unity because I'm ashamed to say I'm going through something. This is why we're here. We're here for you. Especially if you're going through something, we're here for you. There's a power within you no matter what you may be going through today, and that power is a God power. And always inside of you waiting for my agreement to move forward. And sometimes we need others who have a stronger faith at the moment. And that's why we have our prayer chaplains. That's why you can call Silent Unity, 1-800-NOW-PRAY. When my faith is weak at the moment, I can call and tap into that. Like the woman bleeding for 12 years tapped into the power of Jesus moving through her, the power of God that he was expressing. Our job is to joyfully know, no matter what you're going through, God's got this. God is in charge. God is at work. This is true prayer, affirming, knowing, holding truth. It's how our elder brother said, you're praying amiss over here when you're trying to make something happen. It's just letting it happen, saying, thank you, God. I can't wait to see how this is going to work out. Prayer doesn't change God. Prayer changes me. God is already always saying yes, eternally saying yes. Prayer is me tapping into that yes and agreeing with God. The word palal is a Sanskrit word for prayer. It's defined as to judge yourself as wondrously made. Isn't that a great definition of prayer? To judge myself as wondrously made. I am wonderfully made. I am wonderfully made. Affirm that with me. I am wonderfully made. Again. I am wonderfully made. One more time. I am wonderfully made. Breathe that in. In prayer, I'm either affirming the good or I can pray the other way as well. Prayer is telling the universe what I want. It's putting my request out into the ethers. So I can affirm the good or I can affirm not so good, which is what we're really used to doing. Do you have faith that God is at work, or do you have faith that everything's going to turn out just as awful as it always has? Where is your faith today? In debt? Or in God's abundance inside you right now, waiting for you to say yes? In chronic pain, or in the unfailing wholeness of God? In failure, or in the unlimited success every creation of spirit has within him or her? Larry Dossey shares in 1950 a doctor named Bruno Klopfer treated a man for advanced lymphoma. The man had large tumors and fluid in his chest and was considered to be terminal. Every medical treatment except oxygen had been discontinued. An experimental drug called crebiazine had been determined to be ineffective, but the man was going to die anyway, and so the doctor administered it as a last hope measure. The doctor reported, I left him gasping for air, completely bedridden. Now here he was, walking around the ward, chatting happily with the nurses and spreading his message of good cheer to anyone who would listen. The tumor mass had melted like snowballs on a hot stove. And in only these few days, they were half the original size. And he had no other treatment outside of the single useless shot. Within 10 days, the man was declared completely free of the disease. 2 months later, the media began reporting on the medical opinions denouncing the effectiveness of that drug. When the man read it, he began to feel ill again. He returned to Dr. Klopfer, and the doctor told him to ignore the reports because they had a new super refined, double-strength product. So the doctor injected him with the new improved medicine, water. The man responded to the new placebo even more dramatically than he had with the original drug. He immediately became the picture of health. Until a few months later, when he read a report by the AMA that stated that the new drug was as useless as the original. 3 days after reading the report, he was admitted to the hospital. 2 days later, he made his transition. The guy's faith was really strong in what he was hearing at the moment. What do you believe? I'm too broke to have what I really want. I'm too tired to pray anymore. It's never going to work. I'm too disappointed with life to give my career another shot. I'm too old to start again. Every single one of those statements did not come from God. It came from a limited ego perspective that was wrong. Not from the powerful God being, God whispering over and over and over again, this is who you are. Accept the good that I have. So if you are broke, turn within and ask, what do I need to do to increase my abundance consciousness? The producer, Mike Todd, said, I've often been broke, but I've never been poor. That's consciousness. You can go through something fine. That's temporary. Lift yourself up and watch God at work. If you're disappointed with something that has happened, half-hour pity party with a little jar of Haagen-Dazs. I give you permission as your minister. And then get on with it. Sometimes we need to break down to be able to break through. Job had to break down completely before he had his aha moment. If you're having a breakdown, say, thank you, God. The valley of the shadow is a shadow, but we don't live there. We don't build a condo. We don't pitch a tent. We keep moving. So have some cake and a venti mocha, brewed for a half an hour, and then get on with it. Turn within and ask, what did I learn that will help me with my success that I know is coming with God at work, with God in church? And if you're too tired to pray, call Silent Unity. Call us here. Not to advise you or counsel you, but just to hold you in line and say, I see God at work in you. I see you as the God being you are. And I've heard so often, I'm just too old. No, please. There is no old in God. George Burns won his only Oscar at 80. Michelangelo was 71 when he began to paint the Sistine Chapel, and he didn't use Benjamin Moore. He was on his back for years painting that thing. Grandma Moses began painting at 80. She finished 1,500 of them. And 25%, meaning hundreds of them, were done after she was 100. How many 100-year-olds do we have here today? Okay, no excuse. Oh, Henry, put your hand. We have no excuse. Old is not an excuse. It simply isn't. You have no excuse but to accept the good that is waiting for you. As I mentioned, Charles Fillmore, when he was 94, wrote, I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm, and I spring forth with a mighty faith to do what ought to be done by me. That's a great affirmation at any age, but at 94, I keep sharing with you that I love this community. I've only been here a few. I just love you. I'm in love with everybody here. But we need to affirm this a little more. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm. When we do that, we lift this place up, and then growth will be astonishing. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm together. I fairly sizzle with zeal and enthusiasm. Breathe in. Let that energy go forth. Feel it in yourselves. Feel it in every part of your being. Feel it in your career. Feel it in your friends. Feel it in your money. We might feel it here, and then we go home, we look at our bank and go, oh my God. No, my bank account fairly sizzles with zeal and enthusiasm and more. We have to get excited about this. If I'm not excited about my life, nobody's going to be excited for me. I have to do that work. When your life is too much to handle, let it go. If it's too much to handle, it means you're handling it, and we don't know how to do that until Spirit reveals what to do. So I invite you to take a breath, close your eyes. Let Spirit reveal today what your next step is. Breathe in. As we go into our meditation time, we sing our song, Lead Me to the Light. If you don't know it, it's on the wall. If you just want to listen to it, do that as well. Lead me to the light. Lead to the light. Help me to make it through. Lead me into the light. Let my eyes now see all that I could need. Help me to see it through. Lead me into the light. One more time, a little quieter. Lead me to the Breathe in that light, that love, that peace, the joy. Feel it. This is the true gift of God within. There's only one power, one presence at work in the universe and in my life, in my body, in my mind. God the good. What part of my life have I been not believing this to be the truth? In my healing work? In my financial affairs? In my relationships? What part of my life have I thought God is not strong enough to do this? Today I let that go. I let it go. I've struggled long enough. I've tried to figure this out long enough. I myself do nothing, our elder brother said. It is God within that does the work and reveals my next step. Feel that light, feel that love, feel that peace, that presence that passes all understanding, all reason. Allow God to do God's work today. Give permission for God to move forward in your life. I invite you to hold this truth silently in your heart. God is my help, and I am whole. Breathe that in. God is my help, and I am whole. Don't argue with it. Don't try to parse it. Don't do anything but say yes to it. And let God be God. God is my help, and I am whole. I also remember God is my abundance, and I am prosperous. Prosperity is the right of every creation of God. Our great teacher reminded us that the birds of the air and the lilies of the field don't worry about where the next meal is coming from. Everything is given. Everything is here now. My job is to say, yes, I accept my good, and watch it unfold. God is my abundance, and I am prosperous. I remember too that God is my light. I am guided perfectly. I know what to do and how to do it. Whatever questions we may have about life, about anything, God is the answer. Will I remain quiet and still long enough to allow Spirit to reveal what that is right now? God is my light. I am guided perfectly. I know what to do, and I do it. In the quiet within, just for a few moments, I listen, I hear, and I say yes to what Spirit is revealing. Breathe in and let go. Breathe in and breathe out. As we bring ourselves back to this time, this place, this room, we sing our way back with the greatest thing in all my life is loving you.